So I'm going to give you guys a quick walkthrough of how to set up your new Kothari RIP. Today we're going to be setting up for the P600 Katana printer, and we're going to walk through kind of the basic settings that we recommend just as a starting point for top quality. And of course you can branch out from there, and there's a myriad of adjustments available. So I've installed the RIP, and as I open it for the first time, with this particular version, it's going to ask me how I'd like to set up the RIP. My options in this case are the R3000 and the P600, both as a standard version and a CMYK version. The CMYK version you're only really going to use if you have a dual CMYK setup. If you have any sort of white ink in your machine, forget about the CMYK version and go ahead and click the standard version. Clicking on the square doesn't actually enable it. You need to click on the words themselves. That can cause a little bit of confusion getting started. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And this is the first time running this RIP, so this is a default installation from the CD. We're going to show you how to open up layouts and set up your own layout, and of course how to save them as well. So what we're looking at is kind of the layout area here, the toolbars at the top, and this down here is the queue manager, where you can actually see all the jobs that you've ripped or printed in this session. So for the moment, when you open up the RIP for the first time, you're typically going to start in this area here, and we're going to click on this drop down for opening a new layout. And because we selected the P600 standard setup, we have a variety of options available to us at this point for standard layouts. The first one I'm going to start with is going to be the P600 OnePass dark garment, or I'm sorry, black media settings. And we're going to go ahead and knock on that. And then I'm going to click the layout area just to draw focus to it. So I click there, and then Control minus is going to zoom me out. Just like in Photoshop, the hotkeys Control minus, Control plus, you can zoom back in. But you can see that the default layout for the P600 is pretty tall, much taller than what your Platinum is likely set to. So first thing we need to do is change the size of this layout area, and then set up our initial settings for our custom layout. To do that, we're going to right click in the layout area and go to Layout Black Background Print Settings. If I was using a white media environment, it would say Layout White Background Print Settings. Pretty straightforward. But this is where most of your work is done in terms of setting and configuring the RIP. From the first interface, we're not going to worry about a whole lot from now. We're just going to go to the Properties button. And within the Properties button, one of the first settings here is the media size. Before I get into that, you'll notice there's 4 key tabs up here: Media, Ink Assignment, Color Correction, and Device Options. These 4 tabs is where most of the work is going to be done. Most of your adjustments, playing around with your resolution and color values and stuff like that. In terms of setting up your media size, the first time you go to select this option, there's going to be a couple of predefined user media sizes. I'm going to select the first available one. That obviously enables this button here, and we're going to click user size. In this case, I'm going to select a 12.95 by 18-inch print area. Within there, we can set guidelines and margins to further dial in the print area to the actual physical platen. But in this case, I'm just going to start with this basic layout. And when I hit OK and OK again, you'll notice it's considerably smaller. So I left click to draw focus and Control plus to zoom in. From here, I'm going to go ahead and go back into my settings, right click in the layout area, layout black background print settings, and then we're going to go back into the properties. From here, it's going to be pretty easy to set up the initial recommended settings for the black garments. We're going to go to your ink assignment. From here, you can set up your channels in any way you prefer. However, if you set them up in the recommended order, whereas your cyan, your vivid magenta, your yellow, and your the first black channel are all set up with CMYK and then the remaining are filled up with white ink, then you can leave this as is. If you've put your cartridges in a different order, it's not a big deal. By clicking the Determine Ink Order button right up here at the top, you can print a test pattern and actually determine how you should set these slot values. So to get started, we're going to go with 100% white underbase, which is automatically generated. And we're going to change the highlight to about 35% just to get started. And we're going to change it from on the fly to, well, we're going to leave it on the fly actually. From there, I'm not going to mess with the underbase choke at this point or anything else. That's pretty much the starting point for this interface. Then we go to the color correction tab. The only thing I'm going to worry about on here, I'm not going to worry about color booster or adjusting the primaries. We're just going to bring the color strength down to 65%. The color strength value determines the amount of ink that's going to get laid down on the CMYK layer, which also includes the highlight, in fact. So by printing it at 65%, we're bringing it down a little bit because for the default setting, as you're going to find out in this final tab, we're going to print the color layer and the white layer. So the primary layer is 1440 by 1440. And because we're set up to wet on wet or wet on dry adaptive OnePass, our second resolution option is down here. We're going to set that to 1440 as well. That means that while the color and the CMYK layer are both going to be printed in the same pass, they're going to be printed at the top recommended resolutions. Of course, you can get faster prints by adjusting some of these settings, but we recommend starting here and then branching out as you become more comfortable and familiar with the process, the garments you're printing on, your machine, etc. There's a lot of options within here which we're going to get into in greater detail in another video, but pretty much those are the recommended starting values. Everything else we're going to leave it as is in each of these four interfaces. We'll go back through and explain ways you can make adjustments and other things you might change up on your own, but again, this is just to get us started. So I'm going to hit OK to get out of the 4-tab Properties menu. And of course, we want to save this layout that we just made. So from the initial interface here, we're going to go up and click the Save Layout button. It opens to the default folder where Kothari saves the environment files. We want to take it outside of this folder because whenever you upgrade in the future, you might overwrite the defaults and you want to be sure you save a copy. So I'm going to go to the desktop and I'm just going to call these custom environments. And for this one in particular, I'm going to call it Black Media OnePass 1440 by 1440. Pretty straightforward. And I'll go ahead and save that. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to make that available in this drop down menu here. Obviously we have the presets, but we want our own custom layouts to appear here as well. Of course, all that happens within the same general area. We've got our open layout drop down, our manage groups icon right next to it, and our manage environment groups here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here to manage the actual groups that exist. Right now there is none. And we're going to go ahead and check this button down here. We're going to call this My Layouts. You can call it whatever you'd like and hit the return key and click the check mark. Now we have a group, but nothing's been assigned to it. So to do that, you go to the leftmost button here. And you got to start by double clicking the first available white space, and the ... button over here is going to bring up the file browser. Conveniently, it opens where you last saved your custom layout, so I'll just double click on that. We're going to give it a name, and I'm going to use the same name I gave it in the actual file, Black Media OnePass 1440 by 1440. And then we assign it to a template group, in this case, My Layouts. Once you've done this, you can go ahead and hit the check mark. Of course, you don't need to create the group every time. Once it's there, it's available within the first icon here, and you can use it to add as many environments as you want. You can create layouts for high resolution production, speed mode, uh, different garment types, however you want to organize it. This is going to make it real easy. So once you hit OK from the drop down menu, you see our new group and the layout that we created, which is currently open. So that's it in terms of opening layouts and creating new layouts. It all happens right up here within these three buttons, with the exception of actually configuring your layout, which you can right click and do all that within this interface. You may also want to select a port and save that with the layout, but in this case I don't even have a printer plugged in, so no ports are currently available. Also, in the future, every time you create a new layout, any custom user sizes that you created will still be there in the list. You don't need to create a new one every time. So these are just some things to think about. Hopefully this helps you get started with Kothari RIP. The default settings are usually great, but with KatanaDTG we do recommend a specific starting point, and then you can go from there. Other printers are going to have different default starting points, so you really need to evaluate with your specific hardware and the garment selection to determine what the best settings are going to be. Keep an eye out for more videos coming soon, and we hope you enjoyed this getting started video.